Hello, everyone. I'm Seraphic Thunder, and today we are going to be talking about the latest installment from Chilla's art, Jisatsu. On Steam, Jisatsu is described as a found footage mockumentary horror game. It's about a nameless employee who works for a small film company, and he's tasked by his boss to go into an old house to get some interesting footage, as it's currently popular to go into abandoned houses to test one's courage.
最近は使われていない家なんかで肝試し的なことをするのが流行ってるらしいぞ。現地のこの家、ここなんか奇妙な家らしい。
まさか自分が行くんですか？
お前以外に誰が行くんだよ。カメラ忘れずに持ってけよ。いい映像撮れるまで帰ってくるんじゃねえぞ。
I would have quit right there on the spot. But you got to pay the bill somehow, and our protagonist feels this is the best way. Also, the boss is kind of pushy. So after the beginning dialogue, you arrive at the location given to you by your boss. After a cursory look at the overgrown yard, you approach the front door. After opening the front door, the inside matches the outside, as it's very dirty, covered in old boxes and some kind of strange black liquid on the floor. You walk forward and take a glance down the hall to your right. The game just started, and it's already getting weird as you see a person standing at the other end of the long hallway. When you approach, they walk out of sight. We'll revisit who I think this person is later. After trying to find them and only coming across empty rooms, we retrace our steps and take the other path we could have taken in the beginning. It's dark, but we hear running water and find the sink is running in the kitchen. Already, we've seen a strange person that vanished, and now water is running for no reason in the kitchen. From here, we continue to a room that has a table in the middle, what looks like a shrine, and a TV with a video player attached. On the table, there is an article that's in Japanese and a video cassette. I can't read Japanese, but I think it says hidden part. If you can confirm, please comment below. Upon viewing the tape, we take the perspective of someone who's watching two people, a man and a woman, pray over what look like two bodies covered by sheets. There are two picture frames that are censored. This becomes a bit of a theme moving forward, as there will be other scenes that are censored as well. The person gets up and leaves the room. Right outside the room, there is a picture of what I can only assume to be Jesus Christ that is facing the room you've just come from. And this picture is also in the front of the house as well. They enter the room around the corner and find a dead bird in the closet. They then take the bird outside to bury it. After putting the bird in a hole that we've just dug, we turn and hear something moving in the yard. Eventually, We will trace this sound to what looks to be an outhouse. Once we enter the outhouse, we'll be congratulated by something that is in a hole in the ground. What it's congratulating us for, I have no idea. But it will give us a request, and then once we fulfill that request, we'll then retake control of the original protagonist. On the TV, we see a tape on the ground outside in the location of where the person buried the bird in the video. As we leave the room, we see the woman we first saw down the hall when we entered the house, and she's just staring at us. We go to the room and see that it's nothing more than a sweater hanging on a coat rack. Must have been my imagination. Well, it's time to leave the house. My first playthrough, I got lost and went back out the front door as I wasn't familiar with the house. On this one, I went out the door facing the outhouse and was greeted by an interesting sight. Did you see it? Here, let me play it for you again. This was my second playthrough, so I felt more confident. But this scared the hell out of me. And to be honest, even editing this now, seeing those eyes in the window still give me the creeps. This is the first and I think one of the only times we see what I think is the entity the person speaks to on the tapes. After this, we head around to get the tape and we reach to pick it up. We can kind of see a hand and face under the house. Now, on my second playthrough, I couldn't quite see them, but it could have been because I wasn't crouched down soon enough. But they were for sure there on my initial playthrough. This most certainly means someone is here and they want us to see something. For me, I'd leave right here and now, but the protagonist, ever the diligent company man, continues on as there's a story that needs to be told. On the second tape, the voice in the well requests the head of a carp. Well, we just happen to have a pond in the front yard, and apparently it's stocked with koi, a specific type of carp in Japan that symbolizes, I think, wealth and success. It's here that we get another censored image, but unlike the pictures before, we can't see this at all, and it's also accompanied by sound. This won't be the last time we see and hear this, but I'll explain what I think it is later and provide evidence as to why I feel that way. Anyway, we take the fish to the people inside, which are taken back by our request to behead the fish. They tell us to get rid of it, so we have to behead it ourselves.
どうしたの？なんてものを持ってきてるの？頭を切ってほしいですって？
そんなの持ってくるな。出てこい。
After doing so, we turn and see so many beheaded fish on the floor. To me, this means we've been doing this for a while. But I wonder why the elderly couple didn't stop us. The smell must have been awful. We give the entity the fish, or the fish head, I should say, and it leads to our next clue. When we take control of the protagonist again, we can hear what sounds like to me to be the eating noise we heard from the well. After tracking it down, we find another videotape and radio playing that sound over and over again on a loop. We also see someone's foot coming from behind the box in this closet. I don't know why you couldn't just ask who was there or just straight up leave. I would leave. I value life, unlike our company man over here. We turn off the radio, and then the lights go out. We hear a phrase repeated over and over again, and it also moves around in your headset if you have stereo or surround sound. Then we hear what I assume is the person in the closet run away. If you know what the sound is that's being played on the radio, please comment below. On our way back to play the tape, we notice one of the paths to the room with the TV is blocked. As we go towards the front of the house, we see someone or something sitting in the chair facing the door. As you approach, they run away. Typical. Now, at first, I wasn't sure if this was the entity or the person leaving the tapes that was in the chair, but after watching it back, I'm pretty sure this is the entity, as when you look at it, it's completely black, save for like some kind of bag that's covering its head. We play the third tape, and this time, the old woman has died. We also get the return of the censored image that we can't see just outside the house. It's really taking the hidden part article literally. This is where we learn that the two people are our grandparents, as the entity requests a lock of grandmother's hair for an effigy it gives us. He also says that it possesses, I think referring to the effigy. What does it possess? Well, what indeed? I think that's answered after watching the next tape, but first, we have to get the hair for the effigy, so we do. Here's another thing that's weird to me. Grandfather prays over her corpse, but doesn't stop us from taking her hair. I don't understand this. A crow was just essentially doing something similar, and Grandfather shooed it away. However, when we come to take her hair, he doesn't even acknowledge us or try to stop us. Also, this effigy thing is kind of weird. Anyway, once we complete the effigy, we're able to return to the protagonist. When we return, there's one of these effigies that's sitting on the center table waiting for us. We touch it, and the head falls off. There are more of these to find around the house. Upon completion, we'll gain a key that gives us access to a room upstairs that's locked by a padlock. As we head back to the front of the house to go upstairs, we are greeted by another visitor. Every time we try to talk to these people, they run away. Anyway, time to go upstairs. When we enter the room in the back, there are quite a few of these effigies lying around. We notice that in the dark, all of their eyes glow. I told you, these things are super creepy. After we collect the videotape, we try to leave, but the door is locked. Another small statue is thrown in the room. It's this statue that I think is Grandpa's effigy, but I don't really have any proof of that. Also, there's an effigy in the room next to this one that's holding hands with the original effigy, I think, that has a bag on its head. It's similar to the bag that the entity had on its head that was sitting in front of the door earlier. That's why I think it was actually the demon and not the person leaving the videotapes. Anyway, we'll move around the room a few times and eventually a crow will fly in. Once that crow flies in, we hear the person leave and we're able to exit to watch the tape. This time, it's Grandpa's turn to leave us. He just decided to clean himself up before he went. So we find out that he passed in the bathroom, actually taking a bath. This is a good time to point out that time has certainly passed between when these tapes were made and when our protagonist is receiving them. As the protagonist enters a house that's very dirty, whereas these tapes were made when the house is actually very clean, nothing is falling apart, and the toilet is actually in the toilet room, which is separate from the bathroom. We find that Grandpa has indeed died in the bathtub. After removing his nails, as we were tasked to do by the demon, we are greeted by what looks like Grandmother sticking her head out of the water. This, I think, explains what the entity meant before when he said the effigy possesses. I think it reanimated her, and I think she killed Grandfather by haunting him so much he commits suicide also. The tub is full of bloody water, insinuating that he cut his wrists. After bringing back the nails, we return to the present to find we can now enter the bathroom, which was previously locked. After draining the bloody water, we find another tape. Once again, we're locked in. As you turn around, you look in the mirror, and the door opens, and in the mirror you can see someone standing there. All you see are their hands and their pants. Kinda. When you turn, the door is open, but no one is there. You go to play the tape, but the TV is gone. After a search, You see some bags and apples on the floor in the back hallway. You follow the trail of apples to find the hole in the floor that the grandchild was climbing in the last video. We descend to find two paths, one with the cord and one with stairs. If you go up the stairs, you'll find it leads to what I think is the hole where the child first speaks with the entity. Following the path with the cord, we'll see quite a few crucifixes along with a couple of statues and music that's playing from somewhere. Also, our TV's down here. Weird. If you stare at the statues long enough, their faces become censored. This makes me believe that what was appearing before may have been some sort of religious iconography. As to what and why they are censored, perhaps we will find an answer later. But as of right now, we don't know. We pop in the last tape. After the entity tells us to go invert all the crucifixes in the house, we oblige. We go, and room by room, we turn all of the crucifixes upside down. And when we do so, the rooms change. I actually kind of think I have an idea as to what this change is that will be explained later in our theory section of the video. After this is completed and we take back control of the protagonist, we rise and turn to find the statues have appeared behind us. At this point, we should have left ages ago, but our company man finally gets the memo. We go back to the ladder, but find a panel covering our entrance, but there's a hole in the wall that we can climb into, so we do. A couple of meters into the wall, we turn to find a man chasing after us. If you do nothing, he simply catches you. If you get out, you'll run back to the front of the house and exit the gate. Get in your car and attempt to drive away. Unfortunately for our company man here, we don't make it. We get caught. Murdered. And fed to the thing that lives in the ground. After the ending credits, our boss is seen talking to another subordinate, and they're talking about some tapes that were sent to the station. Our tapes. Someone sent them in, but the one who created the footage hasn't returned. The subordinate fears the worst. but the boss thinks it's all fake.
ああそうかもな。
Eventually,
あいつ
the
成果出せっ
subordinate
て言ったのに
leaves and we take control of the boss for a little while.
会社に
Eventually, we hear a knock at the door. When we go into the next room, we see our subordinate is laid out on the floor. We approach his body, and that's when a man in a red jacket jumps out of a locker, and I assume that's the end of the boss. And that is how the game ends. That's it. It doesn't explain why anything happened or who we were running from. But I think, based on some context clues, we might be able to figure some of the things out. So, for starters, the easiest thing to figure out, in my opinion, is that it's the grandchild who's leaving the tapes for us to find and who is eventually our undoing. It just makes sense that he would be older, as clearly time has passed since the original tapes were made and when our protagonist shows up on the property. Also, we hear the entity talking to him at the end after we're dismembered in the bathroom. And as far as we know, the entity only ever talks to the grandchild. So the biggest mystery is, what is the demon actually? Why is it haunting the family? And what is going on with the story in general, as we're kind of just dropped in at the beginning and told to go? And to be quite honest with you, I can't say I know 100% what that is. But however, there is something that kind of, I think, points us in a direction to get us started. First, let's remember the article at the beginning. It says hidden parts. And at first, yes, there are the things that are censored out of the game that we can't see. And though if we were able to, it might give us a better idea of what was going on, that's not the only thing we have to lean on. We also have the achievements. At first, I thought my game was glitching because when I looked at the achievements, I was just getting some random ones and zeros. But actually, when I was recording this, I started to think that kind of seems like binary code. And although I'm not fluent by any means in binary, I can definitely Google a translator. And I did. And what I found actually gave me some pretty interesting, I guess you'll call it insight into what could potentially be going on in the game. So, to get started, you should know that I plugged these codes in pairs. I decided to do this as when I plugged them in individually, it either didn't make sense or it just didn't turn up a word that I could tie back with what was going on in the game. And then also, the final two codes that you get before the final achievement, which is thou art not departing to any place, are in pairs. So I figured, let's copy it and just also plug them in pairs and see what we get. And I decided to do it. One was paired with two, three with four, and then five with six, I think. Um, but that's how I did it. So with the first two sets of code, it turned up either information or Chinese extended net constellation, which is one of the 28 mansions, specifically one of the southern mansions of the Vermilion Bird. What's a vermilion bird, you might ask? I'm glad you did. Well, according to Wikipedia, the vermilion bird is one of the four symbols of the Chinese constellations. Now, we could get really deep into the weeds, but for this, what we need to remember is the vermilion bird is elegant and noble in both appearance and behavior, with feathers in many different hues of vermilion. It is very selective about what it eats and where it perches. I thought this was important, as in the beginning, when you offer the demon the carp, it tells you it doesn't want the whole corpse, it only wants the head. And also, it ate the bird, which it somehow smelled the death on, and that piqued its appetite. So it just made sense. And also, information I included to just let you guys know I found it because obviously a lot of information is withheld from us. So that was the first two pairs. So the second pair had two translations. The one in Chinese essentially meant olive tree, which in the Bible, an olive tree usually is a signal of peace. And today in English, we use the phrase extending an olive branch usually when we're wanting to make peace with someone. The Japanese translation of these pairs ended up as weeping. And I thought both of these were cool because obviously the family is going through much hardship. First, the grandchild's parents die, I'm assuming, and both of the grandparents are very sad. And I think that this leads to the grandmother's subsequent death. And then eventually, the grandfather, because his wife died, also commits suicide. And I think we could use both of these meanings because perhaps the demon came to this family offering some kind of olive branch, only to, in the end, sort of betray them and lead them down the path of damnation that we see play out in the game. The next set can mean the word earth, sweatshirts, or it can mean the phrase lots and lots of. Now, I could have misinput something here, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. However, there were definitely lots and lots of birds in the house as we inverted the crucifixes. And there were also lots and lots of the koi corpses um, in the house, that we found once we beheaded the first head of the koi. Uh, it could also mean something about the thing in the hole being on earth, like Satan coming to earth after the war in heaven. I'm just speculating, obviously, but there's so much we could glean from the information we are given. Also, I think at the end, I'll wrap up nicely why I'm using a lot of Christian iconography. Speaking of Christian iconography, the next set also turned up a few phrases. The first being measuring block, the next one being horoscope, and then lastly, it could be a carpenter's tool or wheel. And staying with the theme, I kind of went with carpenter's tool as um, Christ was the son of a carpenter, if I'm not mistaken. And a lot of the effigies, I think they're all made out of wood. So I think that's how that ties in. But again, this is only speculation. Last but not least, the last pair came out to cormorant. A cormorant is a type of seabird or like a pelican specifically. Now, in Hebrew, the word literally translates to vomiter. So, as I was recording this and editing, going back and looking at some of the footage, this to me specifically ties into all of the black liquid being on the floor and all of the dead birds that show up as we're inverting the crucifixes. It's literally the vomit of the demon. Um, I don't know if it's growing stronger or if it's getting ready to possess the grandson, but in my opinion, that's what we're seeing on the floor uh, near the end of the game. And with that, um, that's kind of my rough idea of what's going on in this game. I think somehow the family came in contact with a demon. Perhaps that demon was always there living in that cave, and they just happened to unfortunately build a house on top of the site where it was, which would explain the whole, you know, devil coming to Earth, and perhaps that's where it landed. I don't know. What do you guys think? I know that was a little long winded there at the end, but thought it was interesting, especially with, in my opinion, the achievements amounting to binary code. Let me know what you think down below. Let me know your theories. I'll be really interested to read them, and I'll go back and forth with you guys in the comments about what you think is happening in this game. But hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something, and I hope you'll come back for the next one. But hey, guys, I'm Seraphic Thunder. Love you, and I'll talk to you next time.